So, can I ask, how can people actually help? Because I know there's a Change.org campaign, and it's just smashed through its first target. So I think we're up to about 6,439.
Well, you're more up to date than I am. That's pretty good.
Signatories. The next target is 7,500.
Yeah.
So we need your help. If you don't know about this now, you've got to sign the petition. But is there any other way in which people can help and support you?
Well, I should just explain, because I don't know how you're going to present things, but I should just explain what's happened. Otherwise, people won't know what they need to sign. So anyway, as I said, we've been running this course successfully, no problems. There were no targets for it in terms of numbers and so on. In fact, the university even boasted about it. We got this course, we recruited all these PhD students who were leading the country and all this kind of thing. And then in May this year, I was told that the university is going to review all postgraduate taught courses and decide, whether they're viable or whatever. And there would be a target. Really the target was set, after the university knew what the figures were. So they set a target. And then the idea was, if you didn't meet that target, your course would be reviewed. They'd suspend recruitment and be reviewed. So I thought, okay, well, that's something that's going to take several months. You're going to go into, all these things, how to market it, this, that, and the other. No, about a week after I was told, well, your course is suspended. Wow. The MRes is suspended. The students who've enrolled this year are going to be told to stay at home. It doesn't exist, and so on.
Wow.
And so I say, well, what can I do, and what can we do? Well, nothing. There was nothing that could be done. I went to see a very senior member of the university who's responsible for EDI, for diversity, equality. I said, look, we're recruiting mainly black students. It's a course about the history of Africa and the African diaspora. There's an obvious issue of EDI here. This is kind of discriminating against particular kind of students, a particular kind of history, as well as against me. He said to me, I can't do anything and I can't say anything. It's out of my hands. I said, well, if you're the person who's responsible for these things and you say you can't do anything, what kind of policy exists? It doesn't. It makes it meaningless to have a policy and then you breach it immediately. Anyway, that was the situation. So, and he also said to me, well, it's a cost-cutting exercise. So I said, cost-cutting exercise? I thought it was about like the marketing of a course and how to do it effectively. He said, no, it's a cost-cutting exercise. So I said, well, the only way you can cut costs is to get rid of me. So that's what it's about then. It's about redundancies.
Right.
So I don't think he didn't answer, but it's clear. I've been around long enough to know what it means. So then I went on holiday, if you can call it a holiday. So I had a few weeks to think about becoming unemployed. But I had no official anything from the university. Then I got back and I found I was summoned to another meeting. Wasn't told what it was about. It was called something like institutional change. I said, what does that mean? I was given another phrase, which is even more obscure. I said, well, what does that mean? Just tell me in simple English, what is the meeting about? I need to come into a meeting. What's the agenda, No, nothing. So I said, okay, I need to go with my union representative. This is, I would be stupid not to. So I went to the meeting and basically I'm told, this course hasn't recruited to our satisfaction. Although, as I said, there was nothing I could do about it. And I should also explain that because we recruit twice a year, any figure of students that you take in May is only half the total figure of the course. So that's kind of discriminatory because we don't operate as other courses do. Anyway, they took none of that into account and said, well, because this particular course didn't recruit and we're closing it, we're going to make you redundant as well. So I'm like, what's that got to do with me? You know, the course doesn't run. That happens. You know, this is ridiculous. Anyway, that was the essence of it. That's what they've done. So they've closed a successful course.
Yeah.
They've and they've linked my employment, even though I'm not contracted to teach that course.
Right.
I taught at the university before that course existed.
Yeah.
I have other, you know, anyway, all that kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's then that we. Obviously, I said, well, have you informed the students? And so they said, no, it's all confidential. So the first thing I did was to tell everybody, told all my students, wrote to all my students, said, look, this is what's going on. And then it was the students and others who launched the petition. And then, as you say, things have developed since then. We've had, as you say, over 6,000 signatures from all over the world, mainly Britain, but also US, Brazil, Ghana, Nigeria, the Caribbean, you name it. And we've been fortunate. It's been covered in the Voice, in the Guardian, on BBC Radio, on Talk TV, on various chat shows in the US, and so on. A lot of people are very. I mean, it's actually very inspiring, I have to say.
Yeah.
If you go on the website on change.org and look at the comments that people write, it's just, you know, it's just so inspiring. And of course, on social media, on Twitter especially, a lot of coverage there. So yeah, I mean, people recognize that this course is not just any old course. It's the only one of its kind in Europe. If it goes, there will be nothing in Britain. You will not be able to study this history. You will not be able to train to become a researcher in this history in the way that we organized the course. So it is very important for people to, it's not about my job, that people might think that's important or unimportant. It's really about the course itself and what it represents. In addition, of course, there's a whole impact on my students. I mean, like Danny, so I supervise his research and another 10 or so students. There's nobody at the university who has expertise to do that. In fact, some of the students have said there's nobody in Britain to do it. I wouldn't say that, but that's what they've said. So it leaves them, because the university hasn't even contacted students. Students wouldn't know. Yeah. If I hadn't told them, the students wouldn't know what was going on. So this university is not showing any care in regard, or concern in regard to the students. And they're now left in a position where they don't know what's going to happen, because I've been given 2 weeks to reinvent myself as something else. I don't know as what, a teacher of astrophysics or something vocational. I don't know what Rishi Sunak had in mind. I should be in processing migrants, or I don't know what kind of person, you know, what I should become in a week or in 2 weeks. What happens after that? Nobody's been told. The students are left in the lurch. People in the middle of their PhDs or doing their research for the MRes. No consideration at all from the university. And so that has to be opposed. In addition, the university are saying that they want, the phrase they use is they want generalist degrees. And what does that mean? Yeah. Does that mean degrees in history which exclude the history of Africa and Africans? It's interesting that they're also threatening with redundancy. Another historian, I only found out about this yesterday because everything's been kept secret. I'm going to say now, it's not public, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Exclusive.
I'm not going to say who he is. Because he hasn't yet made himself public, although he may do so shortly. But he teaches courses on empire and on decolonization, these types of things, these types of courses.
We know who that is, but
Birmingham or London? No, he's based in Chichester. It's in my own department.
Wow.
I don't really want to say any more about him to give it away. I probably said enough for it. But anyway, you could say that if the university wanted to pick on two historians in order to avoid any suggestion that there was any kind of discrimination, they picked up the wrong two. Yes. That's all I'm going to say. So he's also threatening redundancy. So what they seem to be saying is we want some kind of degrees which exclude certain types of history.
Wow.
We definitely don't need Africa and Africans. We don't need degrees that do that kind of thing.
Wow.
So this is, it may actually breach the university's own diversity policy. I mean, it's certainly unwelcome in this period. I should point out that when I first joined the university, I actually taught a course called Africa and the Diaspora, Africa and the African Diaspora in the Modern World, which is a first year module.
Right. And
the first semester I taught that module at the university, it was voted Module of the Year by all the students at the university.
Wow.
And the students are mainly white students, so only black. They voted it. That was my first 12 weeks at the university. So that's not about me. That shows you that this history, they thought it was important. Because they said to me, we've never heard this before. We've never studied anything about Africa at school or anywhere. We've never heard anything about enslavement or colonialism or anti-colonialism or racism in Britain, because we covered everything we started before slavery and then came up to the present day, and we looked at the Caribbean, we looked at the US, we looked at Britain, we looked at Haitian Revolution, we looked at everything in 12 weeks.
I mean, in our experience, it's the reason why we do what we do. It's sort of like African history is history, and it's full of interesting events, interesting people, interesting cultures. If it's presented correctly, it connects with people. So I guess before we go into how people can help, I guess I just want to ask you, like you formed History Matters. Why does Black history matter to you? Because we believe that it changes people's minds, it makes them more active in the community and more positive as well. Why does history matter to you, Professor Hakim?
Okay, well, to me, history is about understanding the world in which we live.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you in your understanding of the world, you exclude certain people, then you get a distorted view of things. So we know that historically, the history of Africa and Africans was excluded generally. So why was that? Was that accidental? Did somebody forget? So the whole continent there, is that really? No, we've forgotten about it. No, of course they didn't. Of course they didn't forget. It was like a deliberate policy to exclude that continent or to diminish it for very particular reasons. One, because it has an effect on the people of that continent.
Yeah.
It's telling you don't matter. You're not even probably even human. You're inferior. You're unimportant to us.
Yeah.
Secondly, it has an impact on non-Africans.
Yeah.
They get confused about everything. So, well, these Africans, they're all savages, and we need to civilize them and so on. So it kind of assists the project of, we can say, the white men of property. Because the project of the white men of property is to enslave people, to invade other people's countries, to exploit people, to oppress people. And so they need a whole worldview which supports that position.
Yeah.
So obviously for us, as I said, for me growing up here, it was a big problem not to have any of that, because it affects your whole identity. Like, who am I? I'm part of something that doesn't exist, that's unimportant, that I'm worthless, that my family and my ancestors never did anything. I mean, you grow up with that it affects the whole way you think about things,
Yeah.
and it affects the way other people think about things. So we want a history which recognizes everybody, which helps us understand the world in which we live, which allows us to orientate ourselves and other people.
Yeah.
And then we draw the appropriate conclusions from that history. So one of those conclusions is that it's people like us, I mean, people in general, who are the makers of history, including Africans. Africans are also the makers of history.
Yes.
You know, the whole world is Africa. Everybody's African in that sense.
Yes.
So you deny that, you like deny the kind of humanity of everybody. So this history is very, very important too, and we could add that the history of Africa and Africans is part of British history. How can you understand Britain and you exclude Africa? You exclude the Caribbean, you exclude African and Caribbean people in Britain, you exclude all these things that had such an impact and have made Britain the way it is. So presenting generalist or whatever it's called history is just Eurocentrism. We're using another word, and there's no rationale for it. There's no justification for it. It's essentially a kind of racist way of looking at the world, Eurocentric way of looking at the world. So it's important for us to oppose that, to say this is not acceptable, even if there was no MRes, or there was no Hakim Adi, or there were no Danis, there were no students. If a university said, we are going to produce generalist degrees or whatever, which it going to exclude certain people, we should be concerned about it, and we should be. The fact that within that context, they then say we're going to close the only course of its kind in Britain, in Europe, in the world, and do all these things and have an impact on the students already there, as well as students like you who haven't started yet. That is very, very serious. And then to use that to attack me and say, you know, this person who was the first British citizen of African heritage to become a professor of history in the country, who 2 years ago we were saying how wonderful he was, and he'd done this and he'd done that, and boasting that we were the first university to appoint such a professor, to then say, to use some excuse to say, well, we don't need this person. Who is he? He's nothing. We don't need him to teach history. We can teach history without him. Isn't that insulting?
Absolutely.
It is. That's not just insulting to me. That should be insulting to everybody, that they can even say such a thing and think that they can get away with it by you know, some sleight of hand. If they haven't recruited students, then the logic of that is that the director of marketing should lose their post, or the vice chancellor should lose their post, or the head of my department should lose their post. What has it got to do with me? I'm not responsible for recruiting students. I did my job. I taught people. I encouraged them to do PhDs. I recruited students the best way I could from all over the world to do the course. What more could you do? And then having done all that, people to say, oh, well, that's definitely a reason to get rid of you. No, that's not acceptable. So, we're asking people to publicize what is going on, you know, to understand the significance of what's going on. We have the support of my union. I've issued a statement today saying this is an attack on Black academia, but we could say it's an attack on academia generally. It's an attack on our history, not just the history of Africa and Africans, but British history in general. It's saying that this history is worthless and can be excluded at a whim, and any excuse can be used and so on. So we want people to support us. The matter's been raised in Parliament. There was an early day motion put down. It's news all over the world. It's in the papers, it's in the Voice, it's online, it's so on. So please support the petition, which is on change.org. You just need to put in my name, Hakim Adi, it will come up. Or you can go to History Matters online and to the blog section, you'll find it there. Or you can just go to my website, hakimadi.org, and as soon as you go into the site, you'll see something, a bar you can click on and go straight to the petition. And you'll also find it on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's probably on Instagram. People can find it. If you can't find it, you can write to me, you can easily find me. And we'll give you the details.
Yeah, and if I might say, the only way in which we can really make a difference is if we take action, and we have to fight for the things that we believe in. And your story, what you've shared with us, shows that that's the principle in action that you've taken, and it's made a big impact on the development of Black history being incorporated into mainstream academia as well. This is very important. In some ways you were kind of ahead of your time. And you might look at it and say, well, okay, look, what you were saying was obvious, but you were knocking on people's doors at a very early stage. And it all has an impact. Even if you get rejected, the very fact that you've raised the issue means that other people can follow in your stead. And like, for example, the case which you mentioned of the Imperial War Museum, they turned them down. They weren't interested. They were very nice about it. They were very English. English are very good at that. Yeah. And they know how to, maintain what they want and be polite about it and maintain the status quo. But we now have initiatives taking place at the Imperial War Museum celebrating Afro-Caribbean, Air Force men, soldiers, Asian men in the army and so forth. So it's taken 25 years plus, but it's made an impact. That's what we're all about, and that's what this is all about. So we want you to take action, spread the word, do what you can, let people know about this, because as you can see, it's an injustice, or we can say that there are levels of injustices taking place here. And we need to be aware of that, because history does matter. Black history does matter. That's why we do what we do. So Professor Adi, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.
Absolutely. And we're going to make that difference. We're going to fight. They picked on the wrong professor here.